what we had was two large groups on either side, and then bookends, as bookends. So you had the ULCA, formed in 1918, and the LCMS, undivided and unmerged since 1847. And then in the middle, you had probably 8 to 10 Midwestern Lutheran denominations, immigrant denominations, that were based mainly along ethnic lines. So the Swedes, the Norwegians, the Danes had a couple. There were a whole bunch of Midwestern Germans, Iowa, Ohio, Buffalo, kind of thing like this. And then there were three, so the middle. There are three major waves of merger. 1917 to 1930, 1960 to 62, and then, of course, 1988. So 1, 2, 3. We went from having a dozen national Lutheran bodies to 2. And the real question was, what kind of merger was this going to be? What kind of mergers were these going to be? And there were 2 models. One was an organic model of merger, and the other was a federative model of organization. Federative would mean strong, the maintenance of strong synods or regional groups with a national structure that would essentially be advisory and assisting to the synods. In other words, a lot of the power would remain in the regional. And I'll use the word synod. It went by different terms in different groups. So conferences, districts, whatever else. I came out of the LCA, so I'll use the term synod because that's what I used. And then, of course, the organic one would be the merging together of questions. So, for example, when in the 1950s, 40s, and 50s, when these middle groups, the Swedes, the Danes, the Norwegians, the Midwestern Germans, were all thinking about merging together, one possibility was that you would just unite all of those groups together under a sort of a federative model. All right? But the vision was the vision that won the day was the organic merger, strong and increasingly stronger national organizations. The mantra, and it really almost becomes a mantra. I'm revising the Lutherans in North America book. I talked about this. The vision, if you look at the history is written as if the consolidation of American Lutherans into one national body was inevitable. I mean, I like E. Clifford Nelson. He's a great historian and everything else. But you know how he ends the history of American Lutheranism about 1970 with Irenaeus, that we will all be one. All right? And the idea was, so the idea was that merger was good. Merger was good. The increasing consolidation. And why was it good? Well, it was good for a lot of reasons, but essentially we could do so much more than we were doing now if we were just united. It's a scandal that we're reunited, that there ought to be one Lutheran church in North America, that we all ought to be a part of that one church, that our mission and our witness to the world would be intensified and broadened in this sense, we would be much more effective as a national church if we overcame these sort of ethnic divisions and particularities and other kinds of things like this. Efficiencies of scale and coordination. So we're coming together. We came together it misfired a little bit. You couldn't end up with one Lutheran church in the early 1960s. You ended up with three. And by 1988, well, we'll end up with two rather than three because it's just not looking like it's going to be possible. But we did this just about the time of the 60s. And when we talked about last night how Americans are losing their trust in organizations, right? What was never really considered was the dark side of merger, the hidden costs. Mergers are intensely costly in terms of time, energy, and resources. Mergers are very difficult to pull together in terms of patterns of loyalty and affiliation. And like I said last night, trust. Mergers tend to be inwardly directed and take a direction away from external mission. And they often produce, because of the political nature of mergers, they produce cumbersome structures that over time need to be reorganized. The one that weighs the most heavily on my mind at this point of time, of course, is candidacy. The ALC and the LCA had very different candidacy models for pastors, and the two systems were not reconcilable. And so what we did is we just sort of took the ALC model and the LCA model and put them together and made it twice as long. And I would support it, if this is an aside here, I would support this model if I thought we were doing better in terms of working with students. I don't think we are. For those of you who are pastors, mobility. Why should it take a year for a congregation to figure out what they want in a new pastor? I have no idea about that. The whole mobility, all that it's cumbersome. What we ended up with in the 1960s was three major denominations that began to run on what I will call accumulated capital from the past, without really spending a lot of time to rebuild that capital, that denominational loyalty. They were built on a generation of what I will call party men. In other words, people who were loyal to the denominations. And so whatever came out of the denomination, my home congregation in Northfield, we are lousy with retired pastors. I mean, we probably have a whole synod's worth of retired pastors at St. John's in Northfield. And when it came time to adopt the cranberry surprise, I had the temerity at an annual meeting to raise the question, well, shouldn't we actually even look at this hymnal before we adopt it? Shouldn't we decide whether we wanted to adopt this or not? No, I mean, it was like I had suggested that the Virgin Mary was a tramp or something like that. I mean, it was kind of like, if it comes out of the ELCA, of course we're going to use it. We don't have to even see. We have this trust. We have this, whatever comes from the mouth of Augsburg Fortress Publishing is we'll use it because it's that whole generation of denominational loyalists in that sense. But that we've run on that accumulated capital for 40 years without really building more of that capital. It's gone.